Hello everybody and welcome to Sin City Living. My name is Jason. I'll be bringing you today's episode. As always, we want to thank all of our fans, our sponsors, our patrons. We appreciate all of your guys' support. Everyone that's bought us a cup of coffee, been greatly appreciated. We've had a rough couple of weeks here in the family, been out of work for a week and a half, coming up on 2 weeks, thanks to our old friend COVID running through us. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time with the usual spiel, so all of you guys that are interested in what's going on with Sin City Living and what we plan on doing in the future with our live streams and upcoming events, please stick around to the end of the video or skip to the end of the video and watch. I will put most of that stuff in the ending spiel, and I will try and update it every week or two with more news. Otherwise, that being said, we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into today's video. So for today's video, we want to answer an email. This one comes from Jeff M, and it's just a number of different questions regarding craps. So it's not a particular strategy, it's just answering a whole bunch of general questions in different categories and then in miscellaneous. So let's take a look. Thank you everybody, by the way, for the coffee. It's very appreciated. Lately I've been doing the Dunkin' Donuts hazelnut blend because, again, I like those candy coffees. And please don't forget to send us some emails. Emails, questions, strategies, anything you would like to see us shoot. We love shooting these videos for you guys. So there's a number of questions here, so let's just kind of go down through it. So his first question deals with the shift change. And what are the procedures when a whole new crew comes to the table? But the thing is, a whole new crew coming to the table is no different than breaks ending and the rotation every 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, the dealers are rolling out as one's rolling to his break, his or her break, and the rest are rolling into their new positions or coming up to the table every 20 minutes. So when you have a shift change and a whole new crew coming in, it's the same thing, only all 3 spots swap out at the same time. Sometimes all 4 spots. Oftentimes when there's a shift change, it's not just the dealers that are swapping out, but also the box. Sometimes not. Depends on the house. Some places keep their floors slightly offset on the scheduling from the dealers. But either way, you're looking at least 3 people swapping out, right? And it's time to go. So his next follow-up, I guess, is it simply a matter of, hey, good to see you, have a good day, or is there a lot of discussion about the current state of the role? It is quick. It is quick because the new dealers need to get on the game and get the game rolling, get it flowing. The outgoing dealers want to get the F home. So it is quick. They do the standard. The stick person will do the standard. Hey, this is the shooter. If there's any prop action, this goes to so-and-so, this goes to so-and-so. The base dealers will give whatever information they deem necessary. If there's anything behind, they'll say, hey, this behind belongs to that person, this behind belongs to that person. If there's a lot of players, like say you have 7 players, so you got to figure out exactly where all the place bets are. The outgoing dealer may say, hey, I've got 3 up front, 4 in the back. What that means is they've got 3 of the players up front and 4 of them on the back row. And outside of that, you may get something like from the stick, they may tell the incoming stick, hey, this person's always working, or this, hey, we're in the middle of a duke, or we're in the middle of a gray roll, 20-minute roll going, or something like that. That's it. It's about 10 seconds of rapid, if that, probably less, maybe 5 seconds or less of rapid fire. And a lot of times it's, okay, there's your shooter, bye, because the game's pretty basic. We just give them the information that they cannot figure out on their own glancing down at the layout, such as, if it's really packed, who's got what bets, especially behind, and prop action. And what happens if the shift change comes in the middle of a monster roll? Well, what happens if breaks come in the middle of a monster roll? We take our breaks. Outgoing person comes in, or the incoming person comes in, everybody rotates, and the outgoing person goes out. So the roll does stop briefly. And superstitious players probably wouldn't be happy about a new crew coming in. No, they're not. They're also not happy about a new stick coming in every 20 minutes. And those are the players that, turn all my bets off, pick up their odds, turn all their place bets off, turn their hard. Some may work their hard ways, or they just completely take their bets down. And it amuses us. And here's the thing about stuff like this, that particular superstition, just like dice going off the table, dice hitting the chips, or a new stick coming in, always leads to a 7-out. Well, it leads to a 7-out about 1 in 6 times, but here's the thing, nobody remembers, it doesn't stick out in your head when a whole new crew comes in and the next roll is a 6. Just doesn't, 40 minutes later, you don't remember that roll. But if a new crew comes in and you're in the middle of a monster roll and a 7 comes, 40 minutes later, you still remember that. So those 7s just stick out in the head. That's the reason people are like, oh, it's always a 7 after. No, it's not. It's just always, it's only what you remember. So you always remember the 7. It's not always a 7. But that's where that main superstition comes from. Next, the caps. The caps on the 6 and 8. Now, there's a number of different ways of paying 6 and 8s. We always say the cap is the number of units inside the bet. Number of units inside the bet. So a $12 8 has 2 units of 6. So it has a $2 cap. And there's a number of different ways to pay it. You could say take the bet and add the cap. So 12 plus 2 is 14. You can also do 7 times the cap. 2 times 7 is 14, or just know what it pays. That's eventually you just know what it pays. And he's asking, how do you calculate the cap? Sometimes it's not that obvious. You're absolutely right, and that's where we get into what we call hidden caps. For instance, this right here, $54 8 is a $9 cap, not a $4 cap, which is why when I set this up, I don't put the cap. I actually just kind of shingle the bet so I can see all the checks, so it's real easy for my eyes to read. It's called a hidden cap. So is there some kind of key for figuring out the caps? No, there's not. And he specifically mentions a $300 6 and how to figure out the cap. Well, you can't because it's all set up in black. There is no cap. It would be a hidden cap. So since there's a hidden cap, we don't bother figuring it out. And he asked, well, to make it easier to pay if you're still using the cap method for paying, which, by the way, you stop using after a while, what would be a way to figure that out? Well, my easiest suggestion for something like this, the $300 6, is what is the cap on a $30 6? And then just add a 0. We know the cap on a $30 6 is 5, so you add a 0, it's a $50 cap. But once we get into the hidden caps, it's something we'd really stop worrying about. In fact, very, very few people, very, very few dealers actually deal with the caps. In fact, a lot of dealers won't cap it at all. They'll put it this way, which frustrates many other dealers. They think this is neater. Other dealers find it irritating because the cap, after a while, is primarily used for presses, not for calculating out the payout. I can't tell you the last time I used a cap for a payout. It's definitely been many, 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 many years. I think I used the cap for the payouts for maybe my first week of dealing. After that, it was a non-factor. But the caps are still very useful when it comes to press moves. So that's why if there happens to be a cap, we do prefer that it is actually capped properly. So what about on the stick? Now he's got a series of questions on stick. First off, if a player tosses in a prop bet after the dice have moved, aka a late bet, and the base dealer books the bet while the stick person no bets it, who takes priority? The stick. The stick person is often referred to in classes and training as we teach people to watch their side of the table as a second box or baby box. The stick person takes priority. The stick person is in charge. So if they call a no bet, then it is a no bet, period. There may be the occasional exceptions. There might be, say, some seniority issues or something along those lines. But if that were to occur, the stick would actually change what they say. For instance, when I was on a crew with a couple of dual rates, and before I was a dual rate, if one of them was on the base and someone threw in a late bet, and I said no bet at the same time the base dealer said bet, I would immediately switch and go, it's a bet. I would give priority to the person that is far more experienced, far more skilled than me. But in general, the stick person is in charge. So what the stick person says goes. Which did I prefer, base or stick? Honestly, I preferred stick, which made me a very, very small minority in dice. But I preferred stick for a couple reasons. One, I had to bend over less often, and I didn't have to twist as much because I pivoted on my feet when I was watching the dice, and I didn't have to keep twisting to get across this whole layout. And I didn't have to bend over to reach all the way across the table and stuff like that. But primarily, it's because my strongest aspect was probably my math. So while I did make mistakes in the center action, like anybody else, is often because I was trying to go too fast, not because the math befuddled me. So it was my favorite spot because I kind of got to play around a little bit with the math and have some fun with it. but most dealers prefer base. Most dealers hate the center action. Not they hate stick, they hate center action. Now, on a really busy table, which is harder, it just entirely depends. You can have a super busy table with 8 players per side and not a single bet in that center action. You can also have 4 players per side, and that is just a nightmare, while this up here has next to nothing going on. So it really absolutely depends on the action. Can't say which is easier, which is harder. Now, lay bets. This is a fun one. So if you lay $100 on the 4 and $100 on the 10, what is the VIG? VIG should be calculated combined. So if a 7-out were to occur, these 2 bets combined would win $100. Therefore, the VIG is $5. Now, some places actually treat them separately, separate VIGs, especially when it comes to charging more. The reason for that is to attempt to avoid the argument that occurs with the second part of his question. Say he lays the 10 for 100, so he throws this in $2 for the VIG. Then he lays the 4 for 100, throws this in $2 for the VIG. Just saved $1. No, he did not, because we're going to look at him and say, $1 more, sir. And if he argues with us, oh well, $1 more, you don't get your bet, period. You can't game the system that way. You can't scam the system that way. And this is what I mean with some places treating it as separate bets to avoid arguments. Player does a $20, no 10. So we say, okay, that's going to be $1. Then they say, let me get a $20, no 4. Technically, I shouldn't charge them. In most places, I'm not going to charge them. Because if a 7-out occurs, this wins $20, which is a $1 VIG. However, what some players will try and do is say, take my no 4 down, expecting that we're going to give them the $1 back, and now they have a free lay over here. And it does not work that way. Which is why some places would charge $1 per lay. Keep them separate. For that exact reason. Not because they're trying to scam the players or gouge the players, but because they're trying to avoid those scams. Do a lot of craps dealers, especially tall ones, end up with back problems with all the bending over you do? Not particularly. After a while, you kind of get used to it. I spent 20 years in the restaurant industry, and it's probably easier on your back than, say, working as a dishwasher, which some people do for 30, 40 years. So, not really. You just get used to it. It's like any other physical activity. Once you get used to it, your muscles stretch out, and you're good to go. Who's monitoring the Eye in the Sky security? Security, although it's a separate branch. Like when you see job postings, you'll see job postings for security, and you'll see job postings for surveillance. Okay. Are they trained dealers? Generally, no. Some surveillance are former dealers. Now, of course, they get a lot of training in the games, but they have a different function. They don't need to know how to pitch cards. They don't need to know these tricks on payouts and hands and all this other stuff. So no, in general, they are not trained dealers. Have I ever had any celebrities on one of my tables? Kind of yes and no. Minor celebrities. I have some friends that have had some major ones. I've tended to just kind of miss them. Either I'm on break or I'm on the wrong table, or I'm off that day. Any memorable moments? I won't repeat any stories about celebrities. I'm just not going to do that. Sorry. So with the mask rules gone, do you think it'll be harder than ever to find $10 or $15 tables? Actually, no. I think it's going to be easier. With the mask rules gone, as business stabilizes and returns to normal, eventually things are going to sort of dip down on business, and when business is slower, casinos drop the limits. So I don't think right now, but give it a few months, especially going into summer, which is typically the slowest time of the year for casinos. The last few years have been an exception because summertimes were coinciding with releases of lockdowns and releases of mask rules that then came back and stuff like that. But I do think eventually the $15 tables, you can still find $15 tables. $10 tables, you could find it. They're a little bit less common, especially if you spend all your time on the strip or downtown. But eventually, as things slow down, the $10 and $15 tables are going to come back. Whether or not the $5 tables come back, I can't say. I think it'd be pretty stupid if they did. But the $10 and $15 tables, yeah, absolutely. And for his final question, this is kind of a fun one. If there's one player at the table, and they're betting the don'ts, and they roll the dice, and they set a 6. And they decide, nah, I don't like the 6. Let's say they're betting right there. Come out, roll. They mark the 6. And they say, I don't really like the 6. So they pick up their bet and they leave. They walk away. What do? Well, here's the thing. Technically, by the rules of the game, and this is very, very, very technically, you have to leave the point marked, and whoever shoots next has to finish that point. Technically. It's very, very technical. In reality, what most casinos are going to do is they're just going to unmark the point. It's going to unmark the point because the table is going to stand dead a lot longer. People are less likely to play if they come into a point already marked. So they're more likely to move along to another table. So, but technically, you'd have to keep the point marked, and someone else, the next shooter that comes to the table, has to finish that point. So, thank you, Jeff, for the email. I hope you guys all find this interesting, enlightening, illuminating, or just plain fun. Please email some more questions. We'll catch you next time. Bye now.
Okay, everybody, and as promised, all the usual blah blah that I try and do at the beginning of the video, we're going to go ahead and put near the end of the video. And here we go. So thank you, everybody, for your usual patronage. All of you that are patrons of ours, we very, very much appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who's been buying us a cup of coffee. Love to say that it's going to coffee right now, but this month with the entire family out for COVID, it's honestly going to Bill's and probably the kid's birthday in a week. But we definitely appreciate it. We're going to continue working on these live streams. I know you guys have seen some of them popping up. Just got to figure out the look of it, and some of the audio is still giving me issues. But hopefully we'll be getting those live streams and the craps tournaments going as soon as possible. Really just going to depend on scheduling. My schedule changed, Amy's schedule changed, kids' school schedule is fun. So once we figure out exactly how all those schedules are going to work, we'll let everybody know. And otherwise, please continue emailing us with anything you would like to see videoed. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate every single one of you guys. We'll catch you next time. Bye now.